Hello again. I just want to talk briefly about my journey, and then I hope it encourages you as well. I'm just going to give a summary, and hopefully someday, God willing, maybe we'll do a longer video about everything. I graduated college in 2010, and at that point, I graduated. You graduated about May. You had a job. I had a job. I wasn't at a place where I could necessarily pursue marriage at that time. I did get a job right out of college in the research world. So I did that for a little bit. And then in August of 2010, a few months after, I had been working, and then I actually went down to the Twin Cities to try and switch, to live. My sister lived in the cities area, to maybe live there and then try and get some things going in a research lab, and or a different kind of lab. My degree was in chemistry and philosophy. So now that didn't work out, and I remember driving back in 2010, back to where I used to live, and that day I got a call from a company that was ready to hire. And I could have taken the job, or I could have tried to interview for that other job. I had interviewed for other jobs, but I could have tried for that one. But for some reason, I just felt, you know what? I'm going to pass on that. I'm going to go back to Duluth, and I'm going to live in the Duluth Superior area, and that's what it's going to be. So I found one of my friends from church had an opening, and I stayed at his house. But that was interesting because that was the weekend that I met Stephanie. So Stephanie and I met that weekend after I moved back to the Duluth Superior area. Again, I was trying to move to the Twin Cities, but I decided to move back, and that was the day we met, or that weekend we met. And so, anyways, we met through different friends at the University Christian Fellowship, and at that point, I didn't know where things were at, and I knew that at some point, God willing, I wanted to get married. So that was not in question. However, I wasn't necessarily pursuing that fully at that time. Now, by November or December of 2010, it became clear that, okay, I'm ready to pursue Stephanie. And so we were in a relationship in November, December. Now, this goes by for a few months, and in about June of 2011, so this is, again, we met in August. By June of 2011, I knew, right? I knew at this point, okay, would like to get married. What do we have to do? And so anyways, we met with our pastor. I had made my intentions clear that we wanted to get married. And so that was in June, the summer of 2011. By the fall of 2011, by September, I got a job teaching at a local Christian school. And that was one of the best jobs I ever had because I had the opportunity to encourage young people. And during those days, at that point, I personally felt that I was ready to go. I was ready to get married and so on and so forth. So this was September of 2011. And now it's very interesting because our story is very different from many other people. Technically, I don't know, one might ask, when did I propose to be engaged, propose to her to be engaged? That was in September of 2011. But before that, in June of 2011, we had already started working out the process of, okay, we're going to get married. What do we need to do? What is the counsel that our pastor has for us? And so in September of 2011, we got engaged, and it's probably the shortest engagement in history because it was only a week. Well, some people maybe have it shorter. But what was interesting is that an opportunity presented itself during one of our pastor's elders meetings because I was an apprentice elder and a tent maker at that time. So I was a school teacher and I was an elder who was an apprentice training to become a pastor. And during one of the pastor's meetings, actually it was on October 2nd of 2011, it was one of those things where we hadn't necessarily planned that, okay, on this day we're going to get married and then set our reception for a different date. Well, I knew I was ready. We knew we were ready to get married. But as far as planning a reception and all those details for a wedding, I just did not have those plans in order. However, I knew that we were ready to get married. I was teaching at a school, I was working full time, and I was ready to get established in marriage and so on. So I actually gave a sermon on October 2nd, 2011, which you can find on YouTube. Here's what's interesting. When I was preaching that day, I didn't know what was going to happen that evening when I got to the pastor's meeting. And so I finished preaching, I left that meeting, and I got back to Duluth. We had the pastor's meeting. But before the pastor's meeting, it came up. And actually at this point, there was something about that day. Because when I preached that sermon that day too, it was a different message. And again, that message will be linked. I'll probably put it on our website. But that was the message I was preaching about 12 hours before I was going to get married, not knowing that it was going to happen that day. Now, again, people's stories might be different, but I just knew that I was ready. So when I got to the pastor's meeting that day, people had teased or whatever and said something about, there was an opportunity that day at the meeting, and essentially, if you want to get married, we're all here. They had all these pastors and their wives, and I thought, wow, this would be neat. Now, what's interesting is that I had heard about situations like that. I remember someone once saying that they wanted their marriage ceremony to be very small, maybe even in a house, and then they could do a reception whenever. But they wanted their marriage ceremony small. Now, that wasn't necessarily my intent all along, back in the early 2011. But at that time, I knew that, I'm ready. We have the pastors. We have some of our friends were able to come that were called on the spot. So it's not like they knew either. Some of them just were told, hey, by the way, we do want to do a marriage ceremony today. And so we decided on October 2nd, 2011, we decided that we were going to go ahead and have our church service wedding at our pastor's house, and then we planned for the reception, which happened later on. So anyways, I just tell you my story briefly for several reasons. Number one, you don't need a lot of money to get married. You just need enough to be able to feed your family and to take care of your family. And if you're thinking, well, we're saving up, we're going to save until we have $60,000 to do a big wedding, well, that's a problem, especially if you're using up all the $60,000 that you could use for something else. And so we decided, we didn't have a lot of money, but we were ready. We wanted to get started and start moving forward with marriage and with family and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to tell my story. Number one, again, encouraging us to recognize you don't need a lot of money. Number two, marriage in and of itself does not have to involve 1 million people showing up. Now, again, I grew up in a country where you didn't have to actually give invitations to everybody who came. You would give certain invitations to certain people, maybe some of your aunts, your uncles, and relatives, friends. But even if I didn't have an invitation, I was allowed to attend a wedding ceremony. And there's times where you heard, oh, this person is getting married, and you just go and then you get free food after. But it wasn't that required to do that. So thinking about how I was going to structure things, even in America, it was more of one of those things of you throw out the invitation and people come. And that's what we did for the reception. We threw out the invitation. We just, everybody, you're welcome to come. And we had a lot of people who came for the reception. But for the wedding, we had it in our pastor's house, kept it very simple. It's important that people establish some of these things properly rather than going a different route. Because one of the things that is really growing in America might be, cohabitation. We're not married yet, we're just going to live together till further notice. But if we're walking with Christ, if we're trusting in His Word, then we should be careful with the things we buy into. And so I tell my story to encourage you. Maybe you don't have a lot of money, but maybe you have enough to have a house and to have a place to live and to have food. Well, if you know you're supposed to be married, then what are you waiting for? And so that's part of our story, and I'm excited to see what God does. We've celebrated 7 years, and we look forward to the rest of our lives together. And I want to encourage young people to really sit down and think, what platform am I using to describe the kind of relationship I have? Are there certain things we're doing that we shouldn't be doing? If we're not married, or should we think through things better? We should. Because God's Word is serious when it talks about marriage, when it talks about preparing for marriage, and when it talks about life after marriage. We need to really pay attention to those things. Sometimes we rather play and not take things seriously when we should take them seriously. And so I tell you my story. We were blessed with many people around us that spoke life into us, that told us about things to watch out for. And even till today, we still have some very good friends that are watching out and encouraging us as we're also encouraging them. My friends, let us not isolate ourselves. Even after we get married, let us be willing to listen to counsel from other people. I thank God for what He has done in my life. Thank you for listening to my story. And I hope that it encourages you in your journey, wherever you're at, to trust God and to go based on His timing. If something is supposed to happen at a certain time and that time is provided, that's what we did. Now, of course, some people might look at that and say they want to have a whole year of planning a wedding. We didn't want to do that. And so I want to encourage you to make sure that you seek to do things God's way, if that's what is before you in that situation. Now, we've been blessed since we've been married. Our firstborn Joshua came in August of 2012, and then Eliana came, and then Isaiah came, and Nehemiah now has come. And we thank God for all of them. But I hope that my story encourages you that wherever you are in life, seek to do things God's way. Thank you for your time, and God bless you.